Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start talking because we've got lots to cover tonight, and I hope you're able to see the screen. And we're going to be in the Develop module like the entire evening. So hopefully we can get through it all. There's a lot to cover. It's some good stuff. I'm going to go over how to use not only the global moves that we made during the last class, but we're going to go over selective editing, so how you can use the gradient tool, the adjustment brush, and the radial filter to do some more localized edits. So we'll do that, and that'll take up a lot of our time. One thing I wanted to go over with you all from the last class, when we imported and you plugged in your SD cards to the computer, I asked you if the import menu popped up on your screen, and a lot of you said no, it did not. So I went in and looked to see, I wanted to make sure I knew exactly the path to send you on to make sure that it's checked where it needs to be checked. So let's give that a look for everybody here. If you're using a Mac, you're going to go up to the word, and this is a PC that's in front of us. So if you're in a Mac, you're going to go up to the word Lightroom. You're going to click on the word Lightroom. You should have some options. One of those should be Preferences. You're going to click on Preferences, and it should open a screen for you. And if you're a PC user, you're going to go up to the word Edit in the main menu bar here at the top, and you're going to click on it, and we're going to go down towards the bottom of it, and you'll see the word Preference. You're going to click on that. Right click. You're going to go up to the main toolbar at the top of the computer, and you're going to click on the word Edit, and it's going to open a window. And you're going to go down till you see the word Preferences. Click on it. It should open this window. We want to be in the General tab. And if you go about a third of the way down, it says Import Options. And there's a line that on this particular computer isn't checked. It says Show Import Dialog when memory card is detected. And so I would like you to find that and put a check mark in there. And once you do, you can say, go to the bottom and say OK. And now, when you insert a memory card, it should pop open the import menu automatically. That doesn't mean it will. It should, but it doesn't always. So I will just forewarn you that sometimes it doesn't. Mine doesn't always, but generally it does. So if it doesn't, we went over how to do it in class, so you should be able to go ahead and get in there without, even if it doesn't open. All right, so let's get started on the good stuff for tonight. So we've got a lot to cover, and so I want to get through all of it. So I'm looking here at this screen, and we are in the Library module. I want to go into the Develop module, and I am going to work with this photo. So I'll select it, and I'm going to go in the Develop module. I could touch the letter D, and in this case, I'm going to click on Develop. And I've opened this picture. Now, this was taken with a 24 to 70 millimeter lens, and so you can see there's some very obvious building tip. And so we're tipped in towards the inside of the picture. So the center of the picture is probably fairly straight, but every building is angling in towards that center point. If we wanted to be able to do some lens correction and things like that, that's what we're going to talk about now. So in the right-hand panel, I would like to go down to lens correction first. So you can go ahead and follow along with me. And I opened that. And now you'll see that the word profile is highlighted. And I'll use this pointer. So profile is highlighted. And the other two right underneath there, these two are not check marked. So let's talk about those two because we're going to mess with those right now. The top one says remove chromatic aberration. Now I'm going to move my cursor over, and I want to zoom in closer. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it since we're on this wall as opposed to the screen, but let's zoom in. And I'm going to click on this building. Now, I did zoom in somewhat. I'd like to get a little closer, and I will cover what I'm doing here shortly, but I'm going to do this on my own here. So I just zoomed in a little bit tighter. All right. So I've zoomed in close on this picture of this building, and I know my screen is not real great since we're using the wall, but if you look here on the right side of this building, you'll see a faint kind of a blue cyan colored line, and on the left side of this building, you're going to see an orange colored line. That is chromatic aberration, and that is caused by your lens or your lens camera combination along with the atmosphere that you're shooting in. And some lenses are better and some are worse at producing chromatic aberration. This is an expensive lens, and it still did it. But we can get rid of that. So all I have to do is come over here to this very top box, check it, and now, did you see it go away? So look at the screen. I'm going to turn it off and on. So there it's off. I turned it on, and it got rid of the orange and the blue line, and it's now just normal colors. So that's a good thing to have checked, especially if you're outside. So if you're shooting outside, it tends to happen on high contrast areas. And a lot of times you'll see it on a ridge line or a roof line next to the sky, or maybe a tree next to the sky, or the edge of a mountain next to the sky. But it can happen anywhere. But generally, it's outside pictures. I find that it's the most. You know, not so much interior pictures, but I tend to have this checked all the time. I've never seen a negative to having it checked, but there's definitely a negative to not have it checked if the picture actually has chromatic aberration. For that reason, here shortly, I'm going to teach you how to make a preset and how, when we import the next time, you just have it automatically attached to your picture as it's imported, and you won't have to worry about it. You can go in and turn it off if you ever want to, but it will automatically go in if you have a certain thing selected. So we will talk about that real shortly. But now let's, I'm going to back out of this picture so you can see a bigger view. And I want you to look at my screen for a minute. And I'm going to check on this Enable Profile Correction. And I want you to watch and see if you see it change. Did you notice what it did? So it has the profile of this lens within Lightroom, and when I turn it on, it reads the metadata, knows what lens I have on my camera, and it makes adjustments to correct for any imperfections that this lens and that camera have together. So I also keep this one on all the time. Now, generally, it picks up this information automatically, especially if it's Canon to Canon, you know, Canon camera, Canon lens, Nikon to Nikon, and so on. But there are exceptions. So once in a while, I'll be using, I notice it mostly if I'm using my Tamron lens on my Nikon camera. Sometimes it picks it up, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, you can come over here to this lens profile area, and it says Make. And if I click on these arrows on the right-hand side, it gives me a lot of different options. So I could find Tamron on there, click on it, and then it will give me some options of lenses that it thinks it could be. So that's all this section is about. Now let's go back up to address chromatic aberration for just a minute. And I want to say, if it didn't get rid of your chromatic aberration or all of it, when you check mark this box, you can go into Manual. And I'm going to click over to the word Manual. You can do that too. And it brings up a few things. Right down here it says defringe, and there's some sliders. So if it got rid of some of it, but not all of it, you can move these sliders around and adjust to get rid of a little bit more. Now you'll notice, and it's a little hard to see because it's right on the seam right here, but there's an eyedropper where my cursor is pointing. Can you see, everybody see that where I'm pointing? And if I hover over that, you'll notice that circle behind it gets lighter in color. So it's dark, now it's light, it's dark, okay? If you see that, there are more of these kind of circles with a tool on top of them. That means you can grab the tool from this point. So if I click on that eyedropper, it will put it on my cursor, and I can move it over to my image. And if I move over here, I can see some of these edges. But I think it would be helpful to zoom in, and I forgot I don't have access. I'm going to put this away for a second. Now this brings up an important point. If I have a tool on my cursor, which I did, I can't just tap on the screen and get it to zoom. So I put it away for a second. I'm going to tap on the screen and get it to zoom in here. And I'm going to walk this down. There was a little bit of chromatic aberration still left down here. I don't see much when I'm looking at it right now, but I'm going to grab it. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to bring it down. You will see this magnification area down with the little panes in it, and there's an X in that center pane. That's what the eyedropper is on. So if I wanted to find, say, this orange area and see if I can get rid of it because maybe it's more chromatic aberration, I want to make sure that color is under the crosshairs of that cross in that magnification area, okay? So I'm going to click there. Oops, I moved it. And it did gray out a little bit. I don't know if you noticed the change, but it did. So it helped correct that. So that's another way to check to see if you can get rid of some chromatic aberration. I'm going to put that back by tapping it back in there. And I'm going to point out another thing, and that is at the top, it says distortion. Now that has to do with that lens correction. And you can, I'm going to zoom back out here a second so you can see what it does. I can pull it to the right, and you can watch my screen, and you can see it is correcting for any barrel distortion that it has, so it makes it go more towards pincushion distortion. Hi, Vicki. Or you can move it to the left of where it was, and it will correct for pincushion by making it kind of barrel out. Now, I have moved this, and now it's not, I don't need to do that. It was just for demonstration purposes. I want to zero this back out or get back to my default setting. I'm just simply going to double tap on the word distortion, and it'll go back to 0. Also, pictures can have lens error, or I guess need a lens correction in the vignetting part. So sometimes they'll have dark corners, so you can pull up this area of vignetting if it didn't get rid of enough for you, or you can pull it down. That makes it darker. If you pull it to the right, it gets a little bit lighter. It'll go too far too. So you just want to pull it so that it looks the same color as whatever it's next to. And you can leave it at that. If you don't want it, if you want to zero it back out, again, you just double click on the word amount on the slider itself, or the word vignetting will put both of those back to 0. The other one is midpoint, so you can, it just adjusts where it's putting the vignette. All right, so that kind of covers this lens correction area. So I generally leave it open to this. Let's go down to the transform area. That's the next one below it. And you can open that panel up so you can see it. And you will see 6 buttons here: off, auto, guided, level, vertical, and full. This is also doing some correction. And I told you my lens was making those buildings move in towards the center, tip in towards the center. And if I wanted to correct for that, make my buildings perfectly vertical, this is a great place to try this. So I'm going to try the first one, which is auto, and you can watch my screen and see what it did. Just, it works so nicely. Now, it usually will work a little bit with the verticals and the horizontals, but in this case, it just really didn't do much to my horizontals. You'll see that these buildings are still tipped. They're still going downhill. That one is downhill. These are going to stay that way just because they were sort of on the side. There's not going to be a correction for that. But I kind of wish that these buildings were straight. So let's think about whether that's possible. So I'm going to turn off the correction I just did with auto by hitting the off button. And let's skip guided for right now, and let's look at the level one. Now that is level is dealing with the horizontals instead of the verticals. So let's try that. And it did make a move. However, it didn't fix my buildings at all. They're still the same, if not worse. What I think it straightened out was this line right through here. So it really didn't help me. So I wouldn't use it. I wanted to show you what it's doing, but I really wouldn't use this one. So I'm going to turn that one off. And the next one is vertical. If I click on that, you can see it corrects and gets all the verticals very nicely. Just almost looks identical, if not identical, to the auto. So it worked really well. There's so much prominence in those vertical lines. I think it has an easy time with it. So it worked really well with those. So let's turn this off again, go back to the original. And let's look at full. Now this is going to do something really strange. It really takes in those considerations. So it did make everything that I wanted horizontal. Look how straight those buildings are. And we got straight vertical. So it did a great job. It works with perspective. But it kind of made for an unusable picture. Let's zoom out. I'm going to move the scaling. So see how I'm over here on these sliders? I can move the scaling to the left. And it's going to shrink it so that the entire picture is still visible. I am going to have to go into the offset a little bit and try to move it so it's centered a little bit. You can see, though, my rectangle turned into something totally different. And quite frankly, I don't think it's usable. I mean, if I wanted to crop something out of it, it would be right down here, just an itty-bitty bit of information. So for this particular picture, it doesn't work. But that's not to say that it wouldn't at some point in time, so by all means, try it from time to time. Again, I want to point out, I've got 3 sliders moved over here, and I want to get them back to the default settings. So I'm going to go up to the word transform. I'm going to double-click, and it put everything back there. And then I'm going to turn off my full thing. And so we're back to the original again. So let's talk about guided for a second. Now you're going to find out with Lightroom that oftentimes it has more than one way to achieve the same thing. Same thing for Photoshop. And this is one of those instances where I can hit the word guided. I could come up and I could click on this tool. That's another one of those tools that's in a circle, and if I hover on it, it gets lighter, darker, and hovering lighter. It also tells me that there's a keyboard shortcut. If you read the words that just popped up there, and that is a Shift-T, and that if I did a Shift-T on my keyboard, it would also put this tool on my cursor. So you can see what happens when I click on that icon. I have this tool going, so let's explain how this works. When you do this, it works with the verticals and the horizontals. And I wanted my verticals to be straight up and down. And you'll see the cross that it does on the cursor. And you'll see this blow-up window. So it's a magnification. So I can see very closely where the edge of my building is. I'm trying to do this left-handed and get it on the edge, on the corner. I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag it down to the bottom of that building. And I'm going to try to hit that bottom of that building. And it can be a little bit of a challenge. We're going to pretend that's on it. There we go. And it did draw a line, but you'll notice it didn't do anything. I got a line there, but nothing happened to the picture, right? So that means I have to put at least 2 lines down in order to use this and get it to work. So I'm going to select another vertical, and I can use 2 verticals, 2 horizontals, a vertical or 2 verticals and a horizontal, 2 verticals, 2 horizontals. I can go as a minimum of 2 lines that I draw and a maximum of 4. So let's go the vertical right now. I'm going to try to get this corner. I'm going to draw it down to the edge of this building, release it, and there you can see it really straightened up my verticals now, which it looks pretty much like the auto did. And in this particular image, auto and vertical and guided are producing essentially the same look. However, sometimes you'll have a picture that the verticals maybe aren't necessarily parallel in the image that you're looking at, but you need them to be. And when you set up two different parallels, or two different lines, it will bring them both into vertical. So it can work on a different picture in a different way than auto does. So do know that this is another great option if things aren't lining up the way you want. Now, if I chose to drop another line, because I said horizontals will work too, if I can find it, let's go over to this corner. So I'll find the corner of that roof, and I'm going to click and drag to right there. And now you'll see it did straighten it up. So now I have the horizontals again, but you'll notice it really cropped out a lot of the picture. And if I go back over here to scale and back it off so you can see it, look, it's that same shape we had before. So again, it may be not quite as severe as it was, so it doesn't seem so far away. So I may be able to get a little bit bigger out of this one, but nevertheless, it makes for an unusual shape that we would definitely have to crop in order to use it. Now there was a little box down here I didn't mention before, and it says Constrain Crop. If I click on that, it will take it so that all that white area is cut off. So this is the biggest usable area of that picture without having to go in to Photoshop and clone in some area. So this is the biggest we could make that picture without having white areas on it. Is there any question with this area of so far that we've talked about? You got any questions about the transform section or the light or the lens correction? Let me turn off this check mark so you can see it. Now, can you see that orange line over here? This one's more prominent right now than this one, mostly because I had done something over here in the manual setup.
I didn't know that showed. I thought that more showed up on the edges of the picture and not could be in the middle like that too.
Yeah, it can be anywhere in there. Generally speaking, it's on the edge of an item. Like you don't see it as much. There's a blue line along this building, it looks like. There's an orange line right here. Do you see that one? Okay. That orange line. So it's on edges, and it's on edges generally with high contrast. You can see the blue one running alongside this brown building. And so if I check mark that box, it does a pretty nice job of cleaning that up generally. And if you don't get rid of it in Lightroom, it will show up if you print it. So it does show as a nice orange line, or it doesn't go away. I mean, it's there. So if you see it on your picture, you should check for it, because if you see it, it's going to print if you make a print. Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't know that you're shooting a Canon or a Nikon,
yep.
You can go ahead and select that. I did that.
Yes.
It gave me a drop down of a bunch of different lenses.
Correct. Let me show you what that looks like.
Close to the lens that I had actually shot with.
Oh, really?
And
okay,
so there's no way to add a lens or to put anything in.
I don't know how to do it. I'm not sure if you can or not. But yes, like I said, here's the make of the lens. So you can click on those double and you get a variety. So here Nikon is checked for mine. So then if I go into the next one down, this is the one that says the model of the lens. So if I hover over it, you can read the whole thing. You can't. So you can see it says Nikkor 24-70 f2.8 ED. But if I open it up, you can see a variety of lens that it could be. And so if it's not the right one, then you can look for another one. And sometimes there's huge lists. This one just is showing a small list.
Is there not a way that in the data for each picture that it says what lens you use?
It does. So you could go on this particular lens. If I go into the library module, over here on the right-hand side is a panel that says metadata. And if I scroll down to the bottom, it says the make is Nikon, the model is, this is my camera, is a D800, and the lens I use is a 24-70 millimeter f2.8. So it does record the lens you're using, and I don't know, even when I've used the one that doesn't show up inside the lens correction panel, if I come over here, I can usually see it. So for some reason, it's recording it here, but it doesn't translate over into the develop module. And I'm not sure what the reason is for that, but that's the case. Okay, did that answer your questions? Great. Anybody else? All right, well, let's move on. Let's look at the left-hand panel. Let's back out of this a bit. And here's the left panel now. And I'm going to close this up. So yours may look like this if you've not been in here. We're going to talk about the Navigator real quick. So I'll open it by hitting that arrow. It turns down. Inside there, you're going to see a thumbnail of the exact same picture that's over here in the big side. I want to show you one thing. If you're not seeing the entire picture, if I can click on that arrow. All right, so here we have it taken up. This is in loop mode. And if I wanted to open that left-hand panel, I come over here and I hover over that little arrow and it pops open. But what you'll notice is that the entire picture isn't you cannot see it right now on the big picture. So this panel is actually covering up some of that image, just a little bit on this screen. On my computer screen, it covers up quite a bit. So it depends on how wide this is probably more of a 16:9 crop where my computer isn't. Anyway, so if you want to be able to see the entire picture, just click on that arrow. That will keep this panel open and it'll allow you to see the entire image in this main screen. So let's go up and let's look up here. It says fit, fill, 1:1, and right now mine says 3:1, as I think that's what it says there. Let's talk about fit and what that means. That means you can see the entire picture on this screen. It's fitted so that you can see everything. If I go to the next one over, that's fill. And you can see what it did. It zoomed in so that it expanded in this case, the width. When it's on my computer, my laptop, it expands it to the top. But this one, to get it to fill the screen, it had to go widthwise. So you're seeing every bit of this image from left to right. But if you look at that little thumbnail up in the Navigator, you'll see it says, oh, just so you know, there's some more information above this screen, and you can see there's a little bit more picture that's not visible on this screen. Now, if you wanted to use this, you could say, well, I need to see the top because I want to see the top of that tower or whatever. So I could click on it because I have this hand on my cursor. I can click on it and I can pull it down so that I have the top showing, but now the bottom's not showing. So as long as you're in fill, you can move it around so that you can view whatever's hidden and you can see what is not showing. So you can move it so you can make some adjustment, but it essentially hides a little bit of your image unless you happen to be on a screen that will be exactly the same proportion as this layout is for Lightroom. Let's move over and see 1:1. It's going to zoom in at a 1:1 ratio. And now I can go back to fit by hitting fit. And this is the mode I tend to use the most is fit. And if you want to go to 1:1, you can click over here and it'll zoom in. However, all you have to do is click on the screen itself. And you can see there's a zoom tool on the cursor. And if I click, it'll zoom in right there. And you can see what it zoomed to in the Navigator thumbnail. And if I click it again, it'll zoom out. What I want to point out to you is wherever I put my cursor is where it's going to zoom. So just be aware that if you zoom, put your cursor where you want to look, and then it will zoom into that portion of the picture so that you can see it. If it's not zooming far enough, you can go into this area over here. Mine says, I think, 3:1 right now. So I can click on that and it'll go 3:1. But maybe you don't need it that close. You can choose from a variety of different ratios. So I can go anywhere from 1:16, which I never use. I mean, that's barely bigger than what it was before. See, it's small. Actually, it's smaller than what it was before. So you can zoom out for if you wanted to. Maybe sometimes it gives you a better perspective, so you can zoom out. But down here is generally where I hit 1 to 2 maybe. But generally, if I'm going to use this side of it, I'm probably in the 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 ratio. And depending on the size of the resolution of your image, you can go bigger. Now this one's going to be, this is a 36 megapixel image because that's what this camera shoots. So if you're shooting a 12 megapixel, then if I zoom in to 8 to 1, it looks like this. And it's really usually not pixelated. It looks like it because we've got this on big screen here. But you may not be able to do that with a 12 megapixel image. So it just depends. It will depend how far you go. Depends on your image. So there's 2 to 1. That's a pretty good zoom. That one gets used a lot. 2 to 1, 3 to 1. And now you'll notice if I zoom out by just clicking on the screen, it goes back to fit. So it remembers where you were last time. So fit, 2 to 1, back to fit. If I were touching on 1 to 1, it'll go 1 to 1, fit, 1 to 1. Okay? So just so you know, if it's not zooming as far as you want, you need to come over here and mess with this. Okay, so let's move down the thing. Today we're going to talk, I lost my cursor. I got to go to the right. Okay, thank you. I couldn't see it at all. Let's close this. Well, let's zoom out. Let's close this. Tonight we're not going to talk about snapshots, history, or collections, but we will talk about them maybe next time. I want you to talk about presets for a minute. These are what came with Lightroom, these right here. And I created this last time I was on the club computer. This is the club's computer, so I did make this, but I'm going to tell you how to do this. So these are going to be in here. And if I scroll down, generally there's a user one. There's not one I don't see on here. Okay, so anyway, if we want to make our own preset, I want to set it here. Because if you sometime buy a preset, you can load it in here. And what are presets? That's an easy and fast way to get you to do something the same way. Say you've done the same edit on 5 different pictures, and all of a sudden you realize every single picture that I'm working on, I'm sliding the same sliders, I'm pulling the same filters out and using them exactly the same way. If I just save this, all I have to do is push a button and it will do it for me automatically. So that's what these are. It's sort of like an action is in Photoshop. Presets are in Photoshop too. This is a preset for Lightroom. So I'm going to open up my right-hand panel here, and I'm going to keep it open. And I want to make sure that these two are checked. Now I can do anything I want, and I'll go ahead and make a few other moves in here. We'll just click auto for here, do an auto adjustment. So, okay, so we did an auto correction in the basic tone panel. So it thinks that it should look like this. We won't even talk about whether we think it does or not, but you'll notice all the moves that it made in here. So you can see all the sliders that have been adjusted. Plus I have that lens correction adjustment. And so I want to go over here to the left-hand side, and you'll notice across from the word presets, there's a plus sign. I'm going to click on that. It's going to open a screen for me. It says create preset. Yep, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to click on it. Go ahead and do that. I want you to follow along with me. I guess I had to double click on it. Huh. Oh, all right. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Okay. Yes, thank you. All right, so you'll see, everybody have this screen up then? You'll see the very top says preset name. So we want to name this preset. And this is what I was telling you about a while ago when I said we were going to make a basic lens correction so that you could apply this upon import. And so that's what we're going to do. So we want to title this, and I can't type, you guys, so maybe Stan can type in here. I want to type in where it's highlighted, and I want to say basic lens correction. And I already have that in there, but so we'll just make, it's a different lettering. You'll see it come in. So we'll leave it as is. Now the next one down says group. You'll see group. Now I've already made a title for this, but I want you to make one. So I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to click this arrow on the right-hand side, and you will have the opportunity to say new group. So click on new group. And we are going to title this. And now I'm going to have Stan do this again over on the, if he would. You're probably going to do your name. Mine on my computer says number 1. Why did I put a 1 in front of it? Because the filing system for Lightroom is such that it will put everything in alphabetical order. But the first thing it does is it puts everything in numerical order. So it's numerical order first, then alphabetical order. So if I put a number 1 in front of it, it will go to the top of the list. And that's where I want it. So I don't have to scroll through anything that I might purchase and add as a preset or buy or get free or whatever. It will all go in alphabetically, and it might be before my name. So if you have a preset that you've imported into there and it's titled something, and my name is Jackie, so if it's before a J, I would have to scroll through and find it every time. This way it puts it right at the top of the list, and I can find it each time. So what you will do is, if you can, is you'll highlight this up here and you will type your name preset. So now we're going to look at this bottom half. It should probably come up unchecked, everything unchecked. If yours isn't, you can go down and hit either check none or check all. In this case, I think none gets us closer, so I'm going to say check none. It will leave this process version checked. That's fine. The only other thing I want it to pick up from all these edits that have been done to this picture is I want it to pick up that lens correction only. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to check mark that box, lens correction. If I can hit the box and click at the same time. There we go. And it checked all 4 boxes. Well, I only want the 2. I really just want lens profile corrections and a chromatic aberration checked. I didn't do anything in lens distortion or vignetting, so I could leave it there, but I'm going to uncheck those because I'm going to be accurate with this. So I'm going to uncheck those 2. And so I only have process version checked plus the lens profile chromatic aberration. Now, if you have all that stuff typed at the top and these things checked, you can hit create. And it should go in, I'm going to cancel out for me, but you can hit create, and it should come up over here on the left panel, and it should say your name, give you the title. All right, so let's look at, we'll go over to we're going to close down this left side now. We're done with that for today, for now anyway. And we are going to go to the right panel. If I can get my mouse over there. Come on. Okay, we are going to look at this row across here. So these are the adjustment tools, and I want to talk about this one first. This is a circle. It's the second one from the left. It's a circle with an arrow on the right-hand side. I'm going to click on it to open it up. Before I do that, I want to point out one thing. If you wanted to use this tool and you need to zoom in to see what you're working on, you should really zoom first. So if you're looking up here, you can see a dirty spot on my sensor. It's right here. So I want to get rid of that, and it should work really well for this. The spot healing brush in Lightroom has a purpose, and it's not to do major cloning or spot removal, but it'll do great usually in skies. So I want to zoom in so I can see it. So I'm going to put my cursor right on that spot, and I'm going to zoom in now. And I'll pull it down a little bit. So, okay, so now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go ahead and open up that spot removal tool panel. And you can see over here it shows clone or heal. Here's the size of the brush. Here's the feather. Right now it's at 100. And the opacity is at 100. Now I want to get rid of this spot. I don't want to just partially cover it. Rarely do I ever use anything besides 100%. Because if you do, it's not going to get rid of the spot or whatever you're changing 100%. It's going to let some of it show through. So in my case here, I want it to be all the way to 100% opacity. And the feather, I tend to like it at 100. If it's not working, you can take it down after you've applied it. But we're going to leave it at 100. I think that's the best place. And let's move the cursor over. And it's kind of hard to see in here today, so I'm going to keep it kind of over here so it's a little easier for you to see. There's an inner circle and an outer circle. The inner circle is actually where it's working, and the area between the inner circle and the outer circle is the feather area. So if I place this over my spot, you can see it's huge in relationship to the spot that I'm healing. So I can bring my size of my brush down. If I were on a keyboard, and I'm not, I could hit my parentheses keys, and I could use the left parentheses to get smaller or the right parentheses to make my brush larger. And Stan was just doing that. The other thing I can do is I can just bring this arrow over here up and down to adjust the size also. So we'll move back over. And you can see now that my brush, I know it may be hard to see, but it's just barely bigger than that spot. If it's just barely bigger than that spot like it is, it may not get the entire thing out. I like to have it slightly bigger, so I'm going to bump this up just a little farther. And then I'm going to go over, and now I'm going to tap on it, and it's going to find what it thinks is a good match for that spot that it was healing. And this is in the clone space. And so if I were doing maybe this building, we'll just do one for the sake of doing it. If I click here, it's going to look for what it thinks is a good match color-wise. And you can see it didn't really fill that in very well. You can move this and realign things. See how I pull it and it changes where it is? See what's happening? So I can try to align it. I actually probably would have come right under it and tried selecting that. It doesn't work really great for this, and I'm sorry I'm not doing a very good job. But so you can pull that around. It doesn't always work. This is just a very finicky little tool. And you can use it for spots, but the other stuff like this building thing, if you would really need to do that, it may not be the best situation. I'm going to close this down. You don't have to. I'm doing it so I can move and show you another spot. I'm going to zoom out. Here's another spot over here. I'm going to zoom into it. And let's pull it over. Oh, whoop. Shoot, I clicked it too many times. Okay, so let me open that back up again. You can also use heal. Right here, I'll put heal on there. So, and if one doesn't work, the other might work pretty well. But what I wanted you to see, I guess I wanted to zoom out here a minute more. From a distance, I'm going to open this back up. If you look down at the very bottom, you'll see visualize spots. It's got a checkbox in front of it. And so I'm going to click on that box. My picture's turning black and white. But look at that bright white spot up in the sky. It's not the moon. That was that dust spot. So that's what it's showing you, is where the dust spots may live. And so you can see them a little easier. And if it doesn't show up enough, you can move this slider that's to the right of visualize spots, and it can even bring out more. So you can see there's another one starting to pop up to the right of that one and to the left. So there's a few more spots that are in there. And I can actually correct from this point. So I can click right on that spot, and it's going to correct that one. And while in here, I can click. And I'll go over to this one and click. And now I'm going to go uncheck that visualize spots. And, sorry. And now I would zoom in. So I'm going to close this up here, but I'm going to zoom in so I can see if it did a good job. And it's, you know, you'll be able to see it on your screen if it did a good job. And if it didn't, then you might have to unclick it and try it again. But that's a neat way to find spots, because sometimes they're hard to see, those dust spots from your sensor. Even, you know, it depends on how dark the sky is, whether you can see them easily or not. These showed up pretty well, except for, see, when I use visualize spots, it did show me a few that I hadn't seen initially. So that is that part. It is about halfway through class, so it's a great place to take a break. I think we'll stop for a second. We'll give you a break for going out and getting water out of the water fountain, bathroom, phone, whatever you want to do. 10 minutes.